WikiLeaks' Julian Assange releases video America needs to see. Leader of WikiLeaks Julian Assange is sharing some facts about Hillary Clinton once again. Clearly, we already know there's corruption, but this may take the cake. In the interview below, Assange discusses how one email in all of Hillary's emails stand out above the rest. He shares that all serious analysts know, and even the US government has agreed, that some Saudi figures have been supporting ISIS and funding ISIS, but the dodge has always been that it is some rogue princes using their oil money to do whatever they like, but actually the government disapproves. However, this Hillary Clinton email says that it's not just a rogue prince, but the actual governments of Saudi Arabia and Qatar. When asked more details about the relations between Hillary and these governments, Assange shares a startling discovery. These governments are funding the Clinton Foundation, buying arms from the US and funding ISIS and ISIL. He shares under Hillary Clinton, and the Clinton emails reveal a significant discussion of it. The biggest ever arms deal in the world was made with Saudi Arabia, more than $80 billion. During her tenure, the total arms exports from the US doubled in dollar value. She's even more wrapped up in criminal activities than we originally thought and using the US to arm the enemy. DOJ files formal charges against the Clinton Foundation. The Clinton Foundation and its board of directors, which includes Chelsea and Bill Clinton, have been formally charged by the Justice Department under U.S. Code Title 16 subsection 216. Under federal law, the DOJ has found that the foundation has accepted money from countries with suspected ties to terrorism. The countries involved include Egypt, Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, and Dubai. In more than a dozen uncovered reports, the Clinton Foundation accepted donations from those countries without obtaining the necessary Form 5649, which is a disclaimer that the person or government making the donation does not engage in nor support terrorist activity. A spokesman for the foundation told CNN that those forms were on file, but after a full warrant search by the FBI they were nowhere to be found. When asked about it, FBI Director Comey said, "That's tough luck. Maybe the Clintons shouldn't have made such enemies of this agency." There's a little bit of karma for a Monday morning. The foundation attempted to show the agency paperwork that proved that more than 90% of the money collected went to medicine and education for children in those very nations, but it's not the spending that is in question. A U.S. attorney working directly for Jeff Sessions, Janice Garbanzo, told the Federalist Papers. The Clinton Foundation thinks because it spends its money on textbooks, medicine, food and clothing for children that it's exempt from the law. The four countries in question may not have made the travel ban, but they are still listed as possible suspects where enemies of the state like the Clintons are concerned. We'll use everything at our disposal to get those crooks. A spokesman for the White House Office of Information and Propaganda says the investigation and subsequent consequences have nothing to do with the election or any kind of rivalry between the president and the Clintons. If found guilty, board members in the know could face up to 30 years in prison. Obama's vacation turned into nightmare. Look who called for action against him. Like a master chess player, Rand Paul waited until the perfect moment to make his move, and according to Western journalism he hit a bullseye. Paul said that the scandalous and very serious allegations that former National Security Director Susan Rice unmasked Trump transition officials for political purposes are just the tip of the iceberg. Paul clearly details how if the privacy of Americans connected to the Trump team could be violated, a billionaire and presidential candidate, then the rest of us have no chance. If that could happen to Trump, the privacy of millions, of hundreds of millions of other people are at risk. Did the president direct you to eavesdrop and sift through intelligence? Paul said. If someone were investigating the Trump administration, it ought to be the FBI, not someone in the White House, Paul added. She's a political appointee that reports directly to the president. Paul continued on behalf of the American people who are demanding straight answers, which until now we have not received. I don't think she answered the question, did she unmask people in the Trump administration? She said, maybe I did, but I didn't do it for political reasons. I think it's incumbent on her to show to the American people why it wouldn't have been a political reason. Correct. But he had more bad news for Obama. The fact that there could be a political figure in the Obama administration that was purposely searching a database, looking for Trump officials, I think confirms exactly what the president said when he said that the Obama administration was doing something nefarious with regard to surveillance on his transition team. And it sounds like they were. Paul said before adding the words that ruined Obama's vacation and terrified Susan Rice. There was no legitimate reason for Rice to be searching a database and unmasking people. So all that is left is to prosecute the crime we know they committed. Steve Bannon warns Trump fans to be prepared for what's coming next. Defiant Steve Bannon declared the Trump presidency he had campaigned for was over as he vowed to carry on the fight after being ousted as the White House chief strategist. Within hours of leaving his office, Mr. Bannon was back at Breitbart, the right-wing website he ran, presiding over the evening news conference. In interviews he made it clear he was not going quietly as he rounded on those he held responsible for his departure. The Trump presidency that we fought for, and won, is over, he told the Weekly Standard, a right-wing newspaper. We still have a huge movement, and we will make something of this Trump presidency, he continued. But that presidency is over. It'll be something else. And there'll be all kinds of fights, and there'll be good days and bad days, but that presidency is over. He added, I feel jacked up. Now I've got my hands back on my weapons, he added as he vowed Bannon the Barbarian would crush the opposition. There's no doubt. I built a NG machine at Breitbart. And now I'm about to go back, knowing what I know, and we're about to rev that machine up. And rev it up we will do. His loyalty to Donald Trump remained undimmed. If there's any confusion out there, let me clear it up. I'm leaving the White House and going to war for Trump against his opponents, on Capitol Hill, in the media, and in corporate America, he told Bloomberg. Earlier Sarah Huckabee Sanders, White House press secretary said Mr. Bannon, 63, had departed by mutual agreement. The White House then issued a statement, saying that the decision was agreed by Mr. Bannon and John Kelly, the chief of staff. A sign of Mr. Kelly's grappling to control the chaos, or perhaps simply to avoid Mr. Trump having to put his name to the firing of the man who most connects him to his die-hard supporters. Joel Pollack, Breitbart's editor-at-large, tweeted a one-word response to Mr. Bannon's departure: war. Mr. Bannon was controversial from the start. Combative and unapologetic, the former Goldman Sachs financier was employed by Mr. Trump as his campaign manager in August 2016, and described at the time as the most dangerous political operative in America. He urged Mr. Trump to pursue a populist path, and pressed him to hammer Hillary Clinton as corrupt, reportedly coming up with the "lock her up" chant that reverberated around his rallies. It was Mr. Bannon, with fellow hardliner Stephen Miller, who wrote Mr. Trump's inauguration speech, a dark and foreboding depiction of the American carnage that Mr. Trump believed he had been elected to stop. He was often at odds with the globalist wing of the White House, Jared Kushner, Mr. Trump's son-in-law, his wife Ivanka Trump, H.R. McMaster, the head of the National Security Council, and Gary Cohn, director of the National Economic Council. Mr. Bannon reportedly referred to them in private as the New Yorkers and the Democrats, among more printable nicknames, and tried to steer his boss away from them and towards his own nationalist sympathizers. At first the president thought fondly of his flame-throwing ideologue, who was seen to wield immense behind-the-scenes power inside the White House. Saturday Night Live depicted him as the Grim Reaper, playing Mr. Trump like a puppet, something that reportedly amused Mr. Bannon, but enraged his boss. His departure had been described as imminent before, but since Charlottesville the drumbeat of demise rose to a frenzy. Mr. Trump was reported earlier this week to have not spoken face-to-face with Mr. Bannon in over a week, and on Tuesday, at the now infamous press conference in which he defended white supremacists, Mr. Trump could only offer a lukewarm endorsement, responding to a question about Mr. Bannon's future with, "We'll see." That press conference sparked condemnation of a president never before seen in the United States. The heads of the military spoke out against their commander-in-chief, and the UN Secretary-General voiced concern. Titans of industry who Mr. Trump had so assiduously courted on the campaign trail deserted him in droves, leading to the folding of both his business advisory panels. On Friday the Arts Council resigned en masse, the first White House agency to do so. Political condemnation was also snowballing, leading astonished Americans to ask when this could all end. Bob Corker, a senior Republican loyalist and chair of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee, who was considered for Secretary of State, declared that the president has not yet been able to demonstrate the stability nor some of the competence that he needs to in dealing with crises. And, while Mr. Trump sought to shift Thursday from the white supremacists to the future of statues, he was criticized by Rupert Murdoch's son James, in an email widely circulated. "I can't believe I have to write this. Standing up to Nazis is essential. There are no good Nazis. Or Klansmen, or terrorists," he wrote. Rumblings of discontent from Mr. Trump's staff grew so loud that the White House was forced to release a statement saying that Gary Cohn, Mr. Trump's chief economic advisor, was not quitting. The Dow Jones suffered its worst day since May on Thursday, but rebounded slightly on the news that Mr. Cohn, a former president of Goldman Sachs, was staying put. Mr. Cohn will certainly not be crying over the departure of Mr. Bannon. Mr. Bannon perhaps sealed his own fate this week by telephoning a reporter with the American Prospect, a left-wing publication, to contradict his boss, and suggest that he was deciding who was in and who was out in the State Department. "There's no military solution to North Korea's nuclear threats, forget it," said Mr. Bannon, directly undermining Mr. Trump's vow to respond if attacked. Asked about his rivals at the Departments of State, Defense and Treasury, who wanted to keep China on side by avoiding trade wars, Mr. Bannon was unrepentant. "They're wetting themselves," he said. "I'm changing out people at East Asian Defense, I'm getting hawks in." But Mr. Bannon may not go quietly. One of the reasons Mr. Trump was said to have delayed dismissing him was fear of weaponizing Mr. Bannon, if he was unleashed from the White House. A friend of Mr. Bannon said he intended to return to Breitbart, adding, "This is now a Democrat White House." Urgent. New report exposes 6 top Republicans on George Soros payroll. Guess who's being paid to stop Trump? We always knew that there were rhinos in Washington, but OpenSecrets.org just revealed that some of those rhinos are actually traitors. Investment Watch. The nonprofit, nonpartisan research group based in Washington, D.C., that tracks the effects of money and lobbying on elections and public policy, revealed that while George Soros is responsible for funding Democrats and progressive causes, he has also bankrolled Senator John McCain and a small but select group of other Republicans. Unsurprisingly, all of the names revealed to receive funding from George Soros have a track record of opposition to President Trump. The GOP recipients of the Soros fund management are Senator John McCain, R.Oz. House Speaker Paul Ryan, R.W. Senator Marco Rubio, R.F.L. Governor John Kasich, R.O. Senator Lindsey Graham, R.S.C. Representative Carlos Corbello, R.F.L. A list of all recipients can be found here. John McCain has been especially critical of Trump, even blasting him today for his stern phone call with the Australian Prime Minister. McCain and Graham also attacked Trump for implementing an immigration ban. "We fear this executive order will become a self-inflicted wound in the fight against terrorism," McCain and Graham said in a joint statement, adding that Trump's executive order may do more to help terrorist recruitment than improve our security. "It seems that every move Trump makes, the same characters are quick to delegitimize the president. Now it all makes sense." Watch Barack H. Obama is freaking out after what Tucker Carlson exposed on TV. Fox News is, by far, the most watched news station in the world because they're the only agency that reports the truth. While every other channel ignores the enormous Obama spy scandal, Fox News host Tucker Carlson is honest and informative. In a recent segment, Carlson clearly explains the spying scandal and why it's a huge problem. "Our laws currently provide no serious protection for U.S. citizens from being spied upon for political reasons by their own government," Carlson said. "This is the terrifying reality of the modern spying apparatus. Democrats, and their cronies in the mainstream media, pretend the spying wasn't a concern because it wasn't illegal. That's because the Obama administration changed the rules to fit their interests. The NSA and other U.S. agencies collect data around the clock. Every U.S. citizen, and many foreign citizens and officials the world over, are susceptible. We're told to accept this because we have a constitutional right to privacy that prevents the government from spying on us without a warrant. This spying scandal shows us that these protections are insufficient. The Obama administration was able to spy on members of the Trump transition team. Others, including Sean Hannity, were also targeted without a warrant or court order. The standard to justify spying on a U.S. citizen is so low that the clearly controversial act of recording all of the communications of a political opponent is not illegal, as long as you claim it is in the interest of national security." Democrats invented lie after lie about Trump's ties to Russia. Those unfounded allegations, in the minds of the left, justify round-the-clock spying on anyone attached to the Trump campaign and administration. Obama didn't need to show probable cause or obtain any evidence to justify their spying. He should be in prison in accordance with our laws. How can we justify our massive spying apparatus if we know it's being abused? How would Democrats feel if their candidates were monitored by the government and had their private information used against them? Democrats need to be held accountable for their actions, and the rules need to be changed. This is counterintuitive to holding free and fair elections, and it must end at once. Watch Sessions interrupts press briefing, rocks media to core with fearless announcement. 2 months after President Donald Trump warned America's sanctuary cities they must comply with immigration officials or pay a price, Attorney General Jeff Sessions backed up that warning with his own statement that the day of reckoning is drawing near. "The American people know that when cities and states refuse to help enforce immigration laws, our nation is less safe," Sessions said Monday as he took the podium at White House Press Secretary Sean Spicer's media briefing, noting that federal officials could claw back funds granted to cities that shelter illegal immigrants. "Such policies cannot continue," he said. "They make our nation less safe by putting dangerous criminals back on the street." Sessions said he is asking nothing more than obedience to the law of the land. "Today, I am urging states and local jurisdictions to comply with these federal laws," he added. Sessions specifically singled out Maryland, which is considering a proposal to become a sanctuary state. That step comes at the same time as the state has been rocked by the reported rape of a 14-year-old in Rockville, MD, high school by 2 older students, at least one of whom is an illegal immigrant. "I would plead with the people of Maryland to understand this makes the state of Maryland more at risk for violence and crime, that it's not good policy," he said, calling the policy a mistake. Federal law requires police agencies to inform immigration authorities when an illegal immigrant is in custody. However, cities such as Chicago, New York City, San Francisco and others refuse to do so. In January, Trump had issued an executive order cracking down on sanctuary cities. Sanctuary jurisdictions across the United States willfully violate federal law in an attempt to shield aliens from removal from the United States. These jurisdictions have caused immeasurable harm to the American people and to the very fabric of our republic, Trump's order said. Tens of thousands of removable aliens have been released into communities across the country, solely because their home countries refuse to accept their repatriation. Many of these aliens are criminals who have served time in our federal, state, and local jails. The presence of such individuals in the United States, and the practices of foreign nations that refuse the repatriation of their nationals, are contrary to the national interest, the order added. That order gave Sessions the authority to ensure that jurisdictions that willfully refuse to comply are not eligible to receive federal grants, except as deemed necessary for law enforcement purposes by the Attorney General or the Secretary. Sessions Monday indicated the administration is ready to pull funding if necessary. He also said that communities applying for Department of Justice grants must now show they are following immigration law,